think this will be an effortless video. Just try to keep my temper under control. This is sort of an important subject to effortism, and I really didn't want to do response videos as effortless videos, but I just, there's just little way I can do both of these things. I mean, this is an important subject. I got to get to it more than once, and yeah, but it's been brought up in a negative way that provokes a kind of response. So anyway, it's this idea of reincarnation. Now, I've had this long-term conversation with somebody who's calling himself Church Caller now. His old name used to be Heroin Church. His original name was Love That Soy or something like that. Anyway, little person. Little trolley type person. So anyways, he's been around for a couple of years and plays this Jekyll Hyde thing. But this subject always has been a sticking point for him. This idea of the part of the Frankenstein metaphor that might say that the present Frankensteins have an incentive to prevent the future Frankensteins. That somehow they have something enough in common, enough similarity, where the Frankenstein of the present could say, I have a self-interest, essentially, in preventing my future existence. That it's the same enough thing, the same thing enough to say that's essentially my value is in that future. So it's almost like you could generically call something like the Holocaust, and you could say the words never again. They're important that you would say those words, never again. Because it's like, this is really too bad a thing. And it's kind of a generic description of a thing. Okay, we know what the Holocaust is, and we're saying never that again. Now, even in that sense, you're an incarnation of something. You could generically say that all people, the million people who kill themselves this year, will all have some qualities in common, some personality aspects, some thought processes, some depression, some angst, some worry, concerns that would be very similar. This very similar neurology, very similar chemistry would be flowing through their neurological blob, and you could classify them as similar individuals for those reasons. And then you could subtext, you could take that million and break it into 100 categories. And so you'd have 1,000 people in each one of those categories. No, you'd have 100,000 people in each one of those categories. And so I've said this before, but I mean, you can think of yourself as being 1 in a million maybe, but you're not 1 in a billion. Even thinking 1 in a million is kind of stretching it, isn't it? I mean, how many people have you known in your life? How many, I mean, it's just not that, although your composition, your personality, generally speaking, is unique, the parts of it that you really value, okay, can be genericalized. You can say, I'm generically this. I'm a vegetarian for these reasons, and I'm a worrier, or I'm a this, or I'm, we have these 100 categories. And if we had 100 categories that we measured a human being by, 100 little things that you check off, you would find that there'd be a lot of people that would have exactly the same check-offs as you. That's how it would work. So they'd be very similar to you in terms of personality type, in terms of how they go through their day, what kind of thoughts run through their head, kind of thoughts, not the exact thoughts. They're not going to be you, okay? It's not a reincarnation in any kind of perfect sense, like you just continue where you left off. I've never suggested anything like that. I've suggested that the basic functionality is the same. So just as human beings worry for other human beings because they recognize a similarity in those human beings, just as they wouldn't expect some foreign invader, Martians or something, if they came to go eat human beings, we'd recognize, oh, I'm a human being, and we'd figure we're on the dinner table, we're on the menu. We wouldn't say, no, I'm special and unique, and they don't mean me when they say human being, because I'm not really anything like any of these other human beings, because I'm unique and special. That wouldn't be the argument. The argument would be is that it would be completely enough of you to be called you. Now, the other context of this is that I've sort of argued that you don't come into existence, you just pop here, so to speak. That's how I got here anyway. I don't know about you, but I just showed up one day. Okay, I mean, one day I was not conscious of my life, and the next day apparently I was, because all of a sudden I said, holy crap, I'm alive. I mean, it just came to me that all of a sudden all this stuff meant something, where the day before it was just stuff coming in and just floating around in a bibble-babble brain. All of a sudden there was a day when my brain said, I'm me. I had a meanness to me, okay, where I would even touch me, and I felt completely different about being me than I did the day before. There was a change. There was this awareness thing. And all of a sudden I was aware of my existence in some new way, some way that it's like now the clock was ticking. Like now the recorder was on, where before the recorder wasn't on, now it was being recorded. The camera was on, okay, and now the game was real. It's that kind of thing, and I think that's a pretty accurate description of what actually happens. Is there's a point where your state of existence moves from not being fully recorded to being fully recorded, fully acknowledged by your consciousness. The machine actually turns on completely, and it's not just the orchestra making noises in the hole down there and lights flashing and scenes moving. It's no, now the curtain's going to open and the play is going to start. Where before that you could hear stuff going on, there's stuff going on, but none of it was coherent. I think that's a perfectly adequate metaphor, really. So I think it's sort of an important in a conceptual sense. Just as it's important for people who say, I care about animals, you don't solve the problem by dying. Well, if you care about the fact that humans will suffer, you recognize yourself as maybe falling into some category of human, and you'd say, if I want to protect that category, well, I have to stop their arrival on Earth. I mean, that's the only way you can stop it, is to stop it from doing this. The curtain goes up and the play starts. There's no other way to do it. That's the only way you can stop it, is you have to stop the curtain from going up, and then the horrific murder scene won't take place, and the slaughter and the mayhem. But his argument is this nihilistic, it only means something now because you're here, and somehow if you care about animals today, when you're dead you won't care, and therefore there's not a problem, which doesn't really make any sense at all. I mean, at all. And so there's nothing you can say to that. So I'll play the end of his video. He made a comment in the middle there about how, well, it's proof that the Amazing Atheist must be right because he has more fans. I mean, this is the kind of logic he's resorting to, which is just so pathetic. So I'll play the end of his video, the endish, and yeah.
In the very first part of the book, he says, I don't believe that this book is going to change anything, and I don't think that it's going to work or succeed. I'm just saying it because it's true and it needs to be said. Okay.
So now he's talking about Benatar's book, and that might be sort of accurate paraphrase, but it's not really. I mean, the guy just is saying that I'm conceding I've got a way long uphill battle here. But yeah, he's not conceding it's not a battle worth fighting. So again, this is a cheap maneuver here.
Fine. That's where it stops, though. There's no reincarnation. We're not coming back, and because of that truth, there is no reason why you should feel any sense of panic. I mean,
Yeah, well, it's not about a sense of panic. It's just a sense of concern. Like I said, if you're worried about Holocaust, well, then you have to actually do something to make sure never again. If you just sit back and say, I'll just wait for the next one, or I won't be here when the next one shows up, so who cares? That's about as illogical as you can get, I think. You can't get any more stupid, you know. Out of sight, out of mind, out of reality. If it's out of your mind, it's out of reality. I mean, what do you think? You think you're God? Yeah.
When you're dead, you're not going to have... It's just like the need that doesn't need to exist argument, okay? When you don't have...
Yeah, it really isn't. It doesn't have anything to do with that argument. It's not like it at all. It's, in fact, almost exactly the opposite. You know, the need, the truth that something of equal value to yourself, of equal integrity, of equal kindness, of equal category, a categorical copy. Okay? It might not be an exact copy, but it's a categorical copy of yourself, will exist in the future. And if you do nothing to prevent it, it will exist. Just as I exist now, because there wasn't somebody who existed before me who stopped me from existing, who had a conversation with my mother and said, "Do you really know what you're doing here? Are you doing this for the right reasons?" You know, nobody took her off to a side and said, I'm going to make you explain to me what you think you're going to accomplish just so we can understand that this is the dice you're rolling and these are the possibilities that will be the outcome. You do understand this, right? That this is not a free ride. This isn't a free lunch. There could be dramatic implications. You're not driving on a road where there's no other cars. You're pulling straws for somebody else. You're going to decide for them that they should enjoy living in semi-modern human civilization and be part of this 50s bullshit values, leave it to beaver world. That they're supposed to somehow think, yes, thank you very much. Well, maybe you should think about that. Yeah, now if somebody had done that, then I wouldn't exist, and then this one individual who has to live with this pointless angst and concern wouldn't be imposed upon. And now you can do the same thing for every type of harm and angst and pain and suffering that's endured, is that it all is preventable if somebody prevents it. If somebody raises their hand and says, I'm going to do what Nevermore requires. Jeez.
A brain to worry about the problems of the world. There are no problems of the world anymore. Well, there are.
Well, jeez, see, that's just so, wow. And there's no more, there'll never be another, whatever the fuck his name was. You're using this image. Like I said, we're all so fucking unique. We're all 1 in a billion. We're 1 in a trillion. We're 1 in a gazillion. We're not types of human at all. I think we are.
Are, but not for you. You don't have any perception of them or knowledge of them. And so, you kind of get a pass on that.
Yeah, right. That, again, that is as if you think you is not part of a whole mass of yous. So if you don't think you're something like pawns or your bishops or your knights on the chessboard, or if you don't think of yourselves as drones to a queen bee, or if you don't think of yourselves as having commonness with these other things that exist, then yeah, that holds true, but you're not separate and you're not unique. And even if you were, they still exist. I mean, I don't have to be a cow to have empathy for cows. And to understand that if I don't do something to prevent cows from being harmed in the future, that cows will be harmed in the future. Now, I wouldn't call that exactly my empathy, I wouldn't say is empathy out of reincarnation. I'm not saying that I am a cow in the future, but I'm saying that its consciousness has enough similarity to mine in terms of its ability to feel that I can imagine being a cow, so to speak. I can imagine some sort of cowness of arriving as a cow, you know, and having to experience the emotions. I know what those are. See, these are things I know that what they are. And so if they're going to be living in, if they're going to exist in these other things, I just don't see how that isn't effectively the same thing as me. And it would take preposterous ego to say that there's something about my consciousness that is so freaking special, and that all these other consciousnesses are somehow discountable. And now their jeopardy is no longer important. My jeopardy is all that's important. And once I'm free and liberated from the harm, that the harm now ends. I mean, the harm is the thing we're concerned with. It's not my personal harm. It's harm as a word, as a concept, that is the problem. I mean, if all you're seeing is your pain, and you're not seeing pain, then you're just not getting it.
But those who are so invested while they're alive to make a difference, that's great, that's good. I just don't like the...
Well, it's good, except you're going to ridicule them and insult them because they use a metaphorical term and have always used it in the context of a non-religious context, that you personally, your memories, your exact identity will not live again, and merely to state that you are not probably unique enough to say that something very similar to yourself in terms of emotional character will exist again. I mean, I don't remember existing in the past, but I'm sure there were individuals in the past who emotionally experience life very much the way I do.
Analogy. And I think it should be ridiculed, which is what I'm doing, making it look ridiculous. So I wanted to...
Yeah, so so on one hand, just say people should, it's good that people care, and they do this little talk about caring, but you're going to ridicule it because it was as explicit as it can be, that it's not talking about religious reincarnation or a soul or any of that stuff. Made it really clear, had a personal conversation with you to try to make it clear, and still you're going to say that's worthy of ridicule. And you're going to say that you have some sort of integrity or anything on the internet, that you're not just fucking jerking off here. You know, I mean, come on. Wow. How low can you go? Well, I mean, we've already seen, I mean, it's like I already predicted it, right? I mean, I made the last video saying, you know, I had the conversation with you as a courtesy, and I did state I said right on the outset, this is all bullshit, because this little backstabbing weasel is going to come flying out of the woodwork again with his little Jason mask on, going eek, 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 with his little knife. I mean, that's all he is. He doesn't know how to do anything else. He doesn't.
I wanted to just post the Amazing Atheist video where he totally just owns the topic on reincarnation. It's an older...
Yeah, right. So he owns the topic. This is a guy who shows no empathy for any other human beings on Earth, pretty much. It's lied notoriously on the internet. It's just totally full of shit. Now you're using him as a character reference or a philosophical reference, an authority. Wow. So, yeah, really, I mean, you know, wow. There's nothing else to say. Man, you really suck. You really suck.
Video, but enjoy.
Yeah, well, whatever. Yeah, I just can't. I have nothing. There's nothing to say. There's just nothing to say to that. So anyway, I just reinforce the point that I think it's really important for any kind of sensible, rational, intelligent human to understand how psychology works in the first place, that you do have to invest in your ideology, your beliefs, your principles. If there will be a never again, that you have to have incentive to make sure it's never again. And the easiest way to derive that incentive is to sort of recognize that if you don't stop slavery, something very similar to yourself might wake up someday in those slave quarters and say, I'm alive. And it might be very similar to who you were when you were 5 years old. And now it's in slave quarters. So this time it's not going to wake up in some kind of suburban, comfortable lifestyle. It's going to wake up in some horrid, disgusting, putrid place. So this is just even another angle to look at this from, is that you started off as a 5-year-old not being terribly complex, or a 4-year-old, whatever the number for your conscious awakening. You weren't all that complex. You weren't all that sophisticated. And that you might be able to recognize that, yeah, something just like that, something just like who I was at 5-year-old, or 4 years old, or 3 years old, is going to wake up. Well, I guess about 3, right? Is going to wake up in that shit, if I let that shit exist. They're going to have that bad destiny if I let it happen. Really, not complicated. Yeah, really not complicated. It goes on. There's a scene in Ben-Hur, after the guy gets beaten in the chariot race, and the evil guy has been totally defeated, and he's just crushed to pieces, and he makes some kind of threat from the grave. It goes on, Judah, kind of thing, because he knows Judah's mother and sisters in the leper colony. He's got another card to throw. And that's how life works. It's going to keep throwing the cards unless you stop the card thrower.